Welcome back to Fitness or Fiction. Today we're joined with Coach Caleb, and Curtis brought his biceps. We're going to be talking about Mr. Coach Caleb's fitness journey, his personal journey, professional journey, and I think his personal training philosophies. Cue the intro.
Mr. Coach Caleb is my father.
Okay, Mr. Coach Caleb. Should we do Mr. Sir Coach Caleb, or is Mr.
Can we not at all? I just know that if I play into this, it will never end.
Yeah, it's not going to be the length it should. So let's get into this thing because we know how we can stretch this out. Today we're here to talk about kind of where you land in the fitness industry. Obviously, this is Fitness or Fiction, so I'm going to do a brief breakdown of Coach Caleb's background. So I ran into you long ago at the gym, World Health, that is. You worked as a personal trainer for a time. You were a Poliquin disciple at one point, and then you left personal training as an industry and you went into some sort of investment banking. I'm going to let you fill us in on that one. Since that, you got back into the fitness industry and you were like, hey, it's way cooler, is what my understanding is. And then since then, you've been following more of the N1 approach, and you've started working with your clients in what you would call experience-based fitness. And in the meantime, you've worked with Adam Miller as your coach, which has really impacted your professional expression. And you have fantastic clients such as myself. And that's a
Man,
big
is this
feather.
about Mr. Coach Caleb?
Yeah, it is, yes.
Yeah,
Thanks
I'm
for
not to
joining
be-
us.
Curtis knows that concision is not my strong suit, so I am not to be trusted with my own intro.
Concision is tremendous. But if that's kind of where you're coming from, where did I miss out? Is there anything I should have leaned into more?
No, I think you covered it. We could have started with the fact that I cleaned treadmills for a period at World Health before training, but that's about it. You covered everything else.
Okay, so we got this is who the heck you are.
Yeah.
Let's start with your fitness journey. So if we know that's kind of like what the background is, as far as fitness, how did you first get involved in fitness as a user?
Yeah, as a user of fitness, I first got into it probably in later years of high school, 16, 17 years old. Following a pretty typical path, or what I would say is a typical path of I was insecure about my body, about my physique. I wanted to change it. I wanted to be, lean and muscular. So naturally I did P90X. And
I thought it was Tybo.
Oh, our memories are way too functional. So it was P90X. There was a little Tybo when I was maybe 12, joining in with the family Tybo session. But
You guys
Billy
had
Blanks,
family Tybo sessions?
I don't
Christmas morning?
yeah, basically. It's look at this awesome Tybo DVD. Let's do it together. Where are the hand wraps?
Do you have video of Pam and Daryl doing Tybo?
No, it was not Pam and Daryl.
Oh. But I thought you said it was a family Tybo.
It was older sisters.
Oh.
Yeah.
Kaylee and Carlin.
Yeah, they couldn't get enough Billy Blanks. Is that his name?
Billy Blanks, yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Double time, go!
Okay, so I did P90X, and then because Kaylee...
Did you get results from P90X?
Yeah, I think I got a few just from the fact that I was increasing my activity, but I think I did a good job of keeping homeostasis by eating more McDonald's.
Oh, so you're balancing it out.
Yeah.
Balancing it.
Yeah, no calorie deficit was achieved long term.
Okay.
But yeah, I got results in the sense that I think when I first started exercising, I was kind of my pants aren't fitting as well as I want to, or I want them to, and then P90X helped me achieve that. It made me more fit when I was playing sports like hockey and stuff, but it didn't definitely didn't build muscle.
And you were 16?
16, 17,
16-ish,
yeah,
okay.
something like that.
How to help with your mindset? Just not just P90X, but just get in better shape. Did it make you more confident? Was it superficial confidence?
That's a really interesting question because I don't think it actually made me more confident. I think that it kind of started this weird spiral of of basically moving the goalposts constantly and never actually becoming confident. So it was cool, let's say P90X helped me become leaner. It was more helping me become skinnier, really, right? So I didn't have muscle mass, I wasn't strong, and so it kind of like fed into that. And I mean, the pursuit of a physique went on for probably 10 years, 12 years after that, right? Till I was like 28 or 30.
That's an interesting thing I want to lean into a little bit. So like the traditional view of the fitness industry is, well, this person did this and 3 months later they look like this. And it's kind of like this happy ending story that you get in Disney movies, but that's never the real story. You look into the real fairy tale, it's a lot different. That's kind of how the actual journey that people go on looks. Like I've seen a lot of people, they post things like, well, you know, your problems aren't going to all be fixed with a six pack. And then you'll have people kind of pile onto them and say, that's garbage. You're going to feel better. Your physique sucks, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, no, like there's real truth to that. And sometimes what you'll see is people make these significant changes as far as either weight loss or muscle gain or whatever. And they realize at that point, I still feel this way. Or even I've pathologized this journey so that now I'm more concerned about how I look and I've set these standards and whatever else. So
Yeah.
can you explain a little more about that? What did that lead you to do next?
Yeah. So I think first I'll say is like, I agree exactly with what you're saying. And I kind of see it in it can go kind of two different general ways. One is that you achieve your goals, you get leaner, you have the physique, but you never see it. You can never see past like your own perception in the mirror. And that's what I experienced in a big way when I did finally achieve the goal. And then the other one is like you had mentioned, like moving the goalposts. So it's like maybe you wanted a six pack and then you finally got there, but like by the time you got there, you were like 8 packs are where it's at. And then by the time you got there, you were like veins are where it's at. And then like it keeps going, right? But that led me, like, eventually I got to a point where a very popular fitness company that did specialize in like those quick transformations, you know, here's a 12-week transformation and it's like, oh, wow, that's amazing. I kind of had the mindset of like, if I just do that, commit myself, be disciplined, just put it all out there for 3 months, I'm going to arrive. Like I'll be lean and then my fitness goals can evolve into something completely different, right? It was kind of like this weird desire to no longer run on the same, like, what is it? The wheels that the mice run on.
Hamster wheel.
Hamster wheel. That's it. I was going to say mouse wheel and that didn't sound
mice
right.
probably do it too.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. But like it felt like that. Like, and I wanted to be off that one and run on a different one, I guess.
Why do hamsters own the wheel? Rats run on those too.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
I mean,
We'll
I would
dig into
argue that
another day.
yeah, hamsters are not nearly abundant enough to even claim
I know.
anything other than
Seems
their
pretty
species.
elitist of the hamsters to me.
So
Yes.
we were talking about
Sorry.
your transformation.
Yeah, so I did, like, I went from probably like 25% body fat to sub 10% body fat in 3 months. I lost somewhere, I was like 185 when I started, 188, somewhere around there. And I was under 160 in 3 months. Like, it was insane. But I really experienced, like, I remember telling my coach, I was like, I cannot, like, my physique looks like shit. Like, I look terrible. Why do I still look so bad? And he was like, do more sit-ups in the morning. Like, you got to build your abs to have them show. And I was like, there are veins on them, but I hate myself. And it was just like this weird, like, I could just never see it. And the weird thing is, like, listeners might be like, well, then maybe were you just not fit? And it's like, but now when I look back on those pictures, I'm like, whew, that was a little hot tamale over there.
Can you talk about, we were talking offline and you were talking about your experience that really resonated with me anyways, and that's like trying to like manage stress. When you were managing stress in a deficit, you're mentioning like you were cooking some cauliflower in the morning.
Yeah. So by the end, that's the thing. So just a real quick synopsis. I'm 185 pounds. I'm given like a pretty strict meal plan where my calories are about 1,700 calories a day. I'm doing 4 what we would call systemic workouts a week, plus cardio, plus intervals. So like way too much. If you kind of know the directionality of those numbers, it's just way too much and way too little food. But by the time I was done, like the last day that I did it, I was just so stressed, and I had been meditating every morning for like 10 to 20 minutes, like following diligently. I was like, because I was really committed to doing everything, like optimizing it all. And I remember I'm sitting there meditating, and all I can think about is the food that I have warming up in the oven, which is salmon and cauliflower rice. Like, ew. Like, I mean, It tasted so good at the time
It tasted good?
because I was deprived. So good that during this final meditation, I cried because I was a simultaneous crying because one, I was really wanted my cauliflower rice now. And then two, I had this weird like self-awareness that I was crying over salmon and cauliflower rice and therefore knew something was terribly wrong. So yeah.
That begs the question, were you going down the road of like eating disorder type tendencies? Like what was your view on food? Was it starting to get a problem or?
Yeah. And I think that that was in part due to like the coach, right? Like they were scared of giving me more food because of the results driven nature of the brand, right? So it's like, if they gave me more food, could it have been good for me? Maybe, but it also could have slowed down my progress, which would have been bad for marketing and those type of things and for what the brand's doing. So I really had no idea how much food was too much. Like, and I'm eating 1,700 calories. I'm not really tracking them because I'm just like, basically eating a really loose meal plan. It's like you can have 200 grams of veggies a meal, meat, and then like a serving of fat, right? So it's like pretty strict. I'm not eating a chocolate bar, fitting anything into my macros. But yeah, it definitely, like for the 6 months after that, which is kind of, I think it took 6 or 9 months of until I started working with Adam Miller. But that was basically me like relearning and really having to let go of like any physique oriented stuff where I would just eat whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted it, and really not having to worry about it. And I did end up having to see a psychologist for that because it was just when I started getting back into counting and tracking, it kind of reared its head.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, you kind of answered it, but how you actually got over those humps, like from complete breakdown, like meditating in a cold plunge and stuff that, like trying to resolve like hyper stress to resolve your stress. Like, how did you slowly get over that and into the position you are now?
Yeah, I think that, like I said, like working with a psychologist was huge. And like, I mean, if my clients are listening to this or anyone, like they know that I'm not ever afraid or like backing down on that. Like I basically think that everyone should always work with a therapist. So pretty biased. But anyway, well, now I've lost my train of thought on it. Oh, how did I? Yeah. So with that, in combination with like starting to work with Adam at N1, he really like broke the mold on like, there is no timeline here. So that helped. And then he was really strict on his boundary about like when the food was getting to a place where he didn't feel like he could advise from within his scope. He would be like, this is time to see a therapist or work through that with your therapist. But really it was just about like, there are no good and bad foods. And, you know, over time, you just start to realize that what you're achieving on the physique front isn't really very much at all attached to like your value as a person and who you are. But that, like, I would even say in the 4 or 5 years since I started working with Adam, that has been like a very slow grind, right? It's taken a long time.
So as far as your personal fitness journey, I'll summarize because I've been doing that today for some reason, but you started with kind of like the randomized like P90X stuff.
Yeah.
Then you did do Poliquin stuff for a while, which
Yes.
which got you into more of a focused environment.
Can you speak on Poliquin? You were
Like
classified a disciple. What is Poliquin?
Yeah, so Poliquin was Charles Poliquin. He was a strength coach for athletes. Very, very popular strength coach. He had like 30 gold medalists in different sports, right? Or I guess 30 different sports, a gold medalist, but very, very successful. And he started an education system. And what he really is known for is bringing like what used to be reserved for strength training. So like very rigidly written programs, right? Like all of the variables, rest intervals, tempo is something that he's known for. Those type of programs, periodization within the general population. So he really popularized that, brought people on. And I think I was just really taken by that because there was and this was before I ended up doing with this company. This company was actually probably an offshoot of Poliquin in a way. But I really liked this element of like control and certainty that he displayed by like managing all the variables. And then that kind of fed into functional medicine type stuff and nutrition guidance as well, which I don't think was good.
I feel like my role on the podcast is to lightly simplify some things for all the listeners, because it's not just personal trainers.
Yeah.
So can you explain periodization?
Yeah, so periodization is just the idea of planning our exercise volume, I guess I would say, and intensity over periods of time. So you might do one program that focuses on getting a lot of volume, so a lot of sets and reps for 4 weeks, and then the next program, you're going to do something different. You might focus on lifting really heavy weights, not doing it a ton, but really trying to lift more, and that's an example of periodization. It's basically just a plan out of the training programs.
Gotcha.
So you did the Poliquin thing. You liked the certainty of it and the detail of it. I know that you still like details and data, which is good. And then you did the kind of, we'll call it the crash course, which was the really aggressive sort of 3-month thing, which led you into a state of borderline pathology. And the thing that really brought you out of that was kind of N1. And N1 uses some really similar principles. They are an offshoot of Poliquin in some ways, but they treat you as a number of one, or an N of one, and that kind of personalized approach, really treating you like a unique human, seemed to be the juice that you needed, where it kind of brought you back to like, what are my values, what do I want, and that sort of thing. And it seems to have informed where you're at professionally. Would that be accurate, or am I missing anything?
No, definitely.
Sweet. So what we're gonna close that part off before we get into your professional experience. What, as far as a consumer of fitness, would you say the biggest crock or fiction is that you ran into, that people are like, oh man, you gotta have this? And what was the biggest thing that you took away from all of the ups and downs and everything, that you're like, man, that is just like, that's inevitable fact, like that is very strong, people should know about that?
Yeah. So the biggest crock, I guess, whatever that is.
It's a shoe.
Yeah. And those shoes should never be worn. So it works. Is I think the idea of optimization. Like this, I think that the idea that we can optimize ourselves is untrue. I think that human nature is to be imperfect. And while, we can maybe break it down and say that I could optimize, my life, maybe. I just don't think that that's a valuable pursuit. And I don't really think that if someone's selling you optimization or optimal this and that they're really selling you anything that's tangibly real or achievable.
That's like the whole culture right now, though. Hustle, grind.
Yeah.
You need to meditate, cold plunge, infrared sauna.
Don't forget this hack.
Journal.
Yeah. Exactly.
So you don't get stressed. You got to do all that stuff so you don't get stressed.
Yeah. You shouldn't ever get stressed. That's just garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the optimization thing, I think that'll be that's even hard for me to chew on. Mm-hmm. You're not really saying like, well, you're not going to try to present the best version of yourself. You're more saying that if you're being sold, here's the formula to get there, that it's inevitably going to be a big challenge, because the process is going to be, it's not going to be a straight line. Is that accurate, or what am I missing there?
I think that's accurate. And then I also think I just think that there's this idea that we kind of want to abolish the human factor of it, right? Like, to optimize is to, in my opinion, like, it's like for machines and computers, right? Like, we want optimal running. We want the cleanest fuel running, like all these things. But in reality, like you brought up earlier, it's like stress happens. That changes things. Like, I had a client today who was sending a check-in, and she had mentioned, she's like, yeah, I like had this great trip. I was really present with my family. I didn't really focus on my health and fitness goals. And then at the end, she was like, is that optimal? Maybe not. And then I kind of questioned, I was like, well, what is optimal? Like, what is optimal in the scenario where you're going on a vacation? To me, an optimal vacation is enjoying my vacation.
Yeah, it seems like what she said is pretty optimal, actually.
Yes, exactly. And then I said to her, I was like, and what if, like, the fact that you're reducing stress, that you're getting companionship and relational benefit, like all of these things, it's like, I think the idea with optimization is, especially in the fitness industry, they are trying to optimize physiology and environment maybe, but we are not solely physiological creatures.
When I'm hearing you talk about optimization, what's like really like pinging in my brain is like the all or nothing mentality. When you're trying
Yeah.
to optimize everything, you're trying to optimize everything.
Yes.
And when you're trying to do everything, it just becomes overwhelming, and then people fall apart, and then they get body dysmorphia, and then they're hard on themselves because I didn't do my cold shower, which I don't do, by the way.
Yeah.
So you're kind of talking about the all or nothing.
Yeah,
Like it's
exactly.
good to improve in certain things that
Yeah.
you value, seems to be what you're saying, but not like
Yeah.
when you put everything on the table.
And I think the idea is just questioning what optimal is, because it's going to be different for each of us.
Yes.
So we can optimize our lives maybe as best we can, but we need to do that on the basis of our values and not, Jocko Willink or whoever.
Liver King.
HGH. So would you say that kind of that conversation ends up being progress over perfection?
Yeah.
Because like
I think so.
the word optimization, I can look at something and be like, okay, she was on a vacation. She said she felt really present with her family. That sounds optimal to me. I think that that kind of does exist in that in that realm, especially if your values line up with that, which universally I think people would in a lot of ways. Not everyone, but like most people would agree. Being present with my family on a vacation is where I want to go.
Yeah.
So it's more of a thing where it's like progress over perfection. It's not about achieving this like weird like in the clouds optimization. It's more like, have I taken steps forward to make this good?
Yeah, and then I think too, like as I would naturally go to is like, again, I would say it's experience over optimization or experience over perfection, right?
Right.
Over progress as well.
Yeah. So I think the separations and borders between those two are something that's really interesting to communicate about, and we often do this in our sessions because we're a couple of nerds. But one of the things that I think can be miscarried is, well, if there's no optimization, then I shouldn't even try. And it's like, no, the real issue is that kind of all or nothing thing where it's like, yeah, listen, the experience of what you're doing, like I'm going in the right path, I'm making progress, I'm going towards something that I've identified as value, is a lot stronger of a pursuit in general, rather than saying, well, if I go all or nothing, once I get here, then I can not worry about how I eat, because that's just not something that's ever going to be true.
Once I get a six-pack, then I'll be happy. That's
Well,
me.
Yeah. And I think too, when you're like talking about that too, of like, I have these values, I'm aligned with my values, I'm going on that. Progress implies that we're still moving towards that. And what I like about orienting to our experience is that if we move backwards, the value is still there. It's not simply that it was a negative, right? That you moved backwards. It's like, why? What were you feeling? What experience created that? What was the experience like of moving backwards? And what does that teach us about what we're doing here? Because maybe that's not really your value, right? Or maybe you need to get a little bit more granular on what your value is within that, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, well, when we talk about the experience-driven thing, it's a lot more about, okay, so I talked to a client that says, well, I went away on an impromptu trip with my wife, and we just needed to get away and recover and whatever else, so I missed my workouts. Like, yeah, well, how was that experience for you? Like, did you get some time to recover? Yeah. Are you feeling better now? Yeah. Well, that is what I would call good. You have progressed in the ability to unplug and enjoy where you're at, which our fitness should be unlocking our ability to really engage with life as a whole. And that's kind of where the experience thing comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think the important thing is to always like bring it back to what I would think the linchpin of fitness is, which is our bodies. And I think like that when we are taking data and we are assessing these experiences, what we're ultimately trying to do is foster a relationship with our bodies and get an internal resource, right? So meaning that, the first time maybe that client went on an impromptu trip with their wife, he needed your reassurance, right? To say, yeah, okay, that was the right thing. But over time, are we progressing in giving him the internal resources based on cues, right? Maybe you had mentioned it was like a recovery need. And maybe there were signals in the data that were like, this guy needs to rest, right? Maybe he's having trouble falling asleep at night. Maybe he's just hungry all the time or feeling strung out. And then all of a sudden you bring it back to that and you're like, well, next time that happens, this is what we're going to do to test it. And then over time, the client starts bringing those cues out, and those cues are very, very individual, right? And then now all of a sudden, whenever that client needs recovery, they will know, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's again, that's a form of progress in a lot of ways. So
Absolutely.
I know it's almost dangerous to say progress over perfection, but it's like it's not always progress towards the like an end point. It's more of like progress through the experience and being able to enjoy things. So
Yeah, and in spite of the need to be perfect, right?
perfect.
The need to be perfect. Yes.
Indeed. So that's a pretty good synopsis of your journey through fitness, and we've started to get into the professional realm of things now. So let's dive into that puppy. So you started out cleaning equipment, went into a PT, went into investment banking, and now you're back and you have a different expression based on your personal experience that we've just categorized. Can you just give us like a 45-second, here's how my professional journey has been shaped?
Yeah, it was basically that experience of doing the one program that was really hard just kind of illuminated to me the struggle that many people might face with fitness, which is, trying systems that work, but it's not sustainable for them. It doesn't create long-lasting results. And that basically just eventually, as I kept kind of iterating on my methods that were getting results, but maybe someone wasn't able to sustain them or whatever, as I kept iterating throughout my career, I started to realize that like we can use the experience to shape someone's very unique fitness journey for them. And so there's no judgment on kind of like what's right and wrong. Of course, as a trainer, we do know that there are certain things that work and we have evidence and things like that, but really trying to make this into something unique for someone. And so that, since leaving banking and kind of coming back into this, has really been shaped as I've come along.
I was going to say, it sounds like to me like when we talk about your philosophies and stuff, to try to word this elegantly, I guess, there's a quote that says, slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Yeah.
So when we talk about your philosophy, it sounds like you do a lot of inner work in your business with your clients. And to me, that's a slower go than like, let's put you on a 1,500 cal deficit, 7 days cardio, 5-day workout plan, people getting results like crazy. And I used to have this talk with people. I don't know if I asked Curtis, he probably heard me say it, but like, who's the better trainer? The one who can do 100 transformations in 3 months, or the trainer who does 5 clients perfectly, develops that inner work? There's a weird balance there for me. Like, I'm not entirely sure where I sit on that question, I guess. Like,
yeah, I think that's a really important question. And I think ultimately, like with my philosophy, the question of, I think a natural question is like, do you even get results? I had that question in a call the other day.
that's insane to me, because I can definitely see how your method or your philosophies would get results, but I think that your clientele, like your optimal clientele, would be harder to find because not everybody's ready to do that inner work. Not everybody's ready for that. And some people just want the hack.
Well, and I think you need to have experienced the pain of the failure of the hack
and
over and over, right? You need to be at a certain point where you're like, okay, I know that like the snake oil of the latest trend,
Liver King.
Yeah, Liver King, cold showers, whatever, is not like the be all end all. And some of those things have a place in your program, sure, but not Liver King stuff. Yeah, and I think to answer your question about like slow is smooth, smooth is fast, is that how we say it? Yeah. I love that saying too, especially when you get good at it. So what I do is the first thing I'll answer is about the speed. It goes the speed that it goes. So that's the thing, is like I don't slow it down.
It sounds like it goes the speed
it
it should go.
Yeah,
for that person.
Yes. However, it like, so for instance, someone might be like really scared about the all or nothing, and they've come to me years of chronic dieting. It's probably going to take a little more time, because the first thing we're probably going to do is bring food up, teach them how to live at maintenance where they're actually like having enough fuel to run their body. But then it's also going to take that kind of inner work piece. And to be clear on that too, with respect to inner work, I don't ever administer it or like because I'm not a therapist, I draw a very clear line on it. But what I do is I open space for them to deal with those things within kind of the container that is the coaching relationship.
Yeah, but that container for you, like, it's not really hard to mind, because you're not trying to say, well, I'm a psychologist. What you're saying is, well, what do you value? What was that experience like? Does that fit with your values? Like,
yes.
You're trying to help them walk through an experience, not trying to present therapy. That's
exactly.
That's a big separation there.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, it's a really interesting conversation to say, what are results? Mm-hmm. So I had a trainer last week that I was talking to, and he said, I'm just going to change all my rates. It's going to be that somebody trains with me 3 times a week, or they don't train with me in person at all. And I was told that's the thing to do, and it's simple, and I'll only get the clients that I want, and that way I can really give them results. And I was like, bear with me. I'm getting philosophical on you. I'm sorry. What are results? Mm-hmm. Can you I can't get my clients as good of results unless I see them 3 times a week. Can you just give me what are results? Because I have clients that I don't see in person at all. Can you tell me exactly what you're talking about? And he said, well, body comp and like strength and things like that. And I was like, and does that recognize all the things that people are getting out of their fitness? Because those, to me, they're big icebergs and stuff,
mm-hmm.
but they're only the tips.
Yeah.
The stuff underneath of that I'm really interested in is when you watch people carry themselves differently.
Yeah.
When you watch people have a different confidence in themselves or a different freedom to go do things and engage with the world, those are the things that I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
And so when I said to him, well, what are results? And we started talking it through, you could see this kind of like, oh man, I don't know, it's a bigger topic that I wanted to get into. And I was like, what if this is their only alone time a week? Mm-hmm. What if this is the only time that they're connecting with their own tissues, and they have somebody that's gonna focus on specifically what they need physically mm-hmm. for that space? And it ended up being a really interesting conversation that I think we both left from being like, oh man, it's not as simple as it would be made. Would you kind of find that that's where you land on this sort of stuff too, where it's not just about the weight loss or the strength, it's actually about something that's bigger than that, not getting into the theological realm or therapy realm, mm-hmm. but more helping people follow what they're truly looking for?
Yeah, like I would say, to sum that up quickly, if it's possible for me to do, we're about to find out, is I would say that the striving for results. So I work in body composition mainly, right? 95% of people, maybe more, is body composition. To me, those results, the achievement of that, the journey, the process of trying to get results is the vehicle that we're using to create change around the relationship with fitness. So to me, the way that someone relates to fitness, that is results, right? And like you said, there's so much that can go into that, right? And it can be so many things, but I'm using a different vehicle than you do maybe in your practice, because you don't solely work with body composition, right? So that's kind of how I view it.
Yeah, for you, that's kind of like a really focused lens, whereas for me, I deal a lot with people that are pretty busted or really want to get into like barbell sports and other stuff like soccer and things like this.
And I think for both of us, we're familiar with the vehicle, right? Like I'm familiar with the vehicle of body composition change because I've gone through it so many times wrong, and I've dealt with so many like psychological hangups on it. And I think that when I was doing fitness, I would get people results with body comp, and then I'd be like, that's not really helping them very much. They're very upset, or like they're not really getting, I think, what they truly want. So it's just about opening that space up a little bit. And then for you too, you've had like injuries and things that you like, very many things, right, over the course of your career that kind of inform the vehicle that you use as well.
You know what I want your take on, or your info? Like one of my struggles when I was first becoming a trainer, I was like 21 or whatever. So I loved exercise. I was in martial arts. I was in boxing. I loved to move. Like moving was everything to me. So when I became a trainer, I thought most people would feel that way. And my biggest hang up was that people, like a lot of people I was dealing with, didn't like exercise. It wasn't fun to them, and it was a pain in the butt. And I had a hard time like maneuvering around that with people. So how do you maneuver that? I'm assuming you've dealt with people like that who like just hate their exercise. How do you go around helping people with that?
Yeah, I think that for me, again, that really plays into like the idea of values, and basically this idea that there is something that someone values deeply. They may or may not know what that is, but we're trying to align their fitness to it. And so I always say to people, I'm like, what we're trying to do here is discover your values as they pertain to health and fitness. And I think one thing in my business is the way that I present myself and the education that I have does nowadays lend to the idea that people like exercise a little bit. Like they are coming from the background of like they've heard of N1 maybe, or they've seen certain trainers, they like doing bodybuilding style training. But to more directly answer your question, I think it's important to expand the scope of what activity and what exercise can be, right? And it's like, yeah, I think that at a bare minimum, we should educate people that having muscle mass is very important as you age. It's very important for function. It's important for joint function to be able to move through full ranges of motion. And I think that teaching people what that can give them can hook on a value that many people have, which is moving well and aging well, right? But I also think that there are some people that want to train 5 days a week and they love training and they want to see their lats grow a bunch, right? Or something. There are also people who's like, they're maybe a mom or a dad and they only really have time to do like 3 45-minute sessions. And with that, it's kind of like, look, like this is going to help you build your muscle. This is what's going to give us that. And you know, we can kind of agree on that. I'm going to try to do the movements that you like. I'm going to try to make it, you know, in a way that really works for you, that you can get through. But then, you know, being active with your kids, doing yoga, going, like people love Peloton now, like doing a Peloton workout, like those can all have a place, right? And so, and I even had like a client I'm thinking of right now who, you know, has started riding bikes with her sons. It's like, that is, I was like harping on it in her last check-in so much because I'm like, you don't have to like run alone or like walk on the treadmill in the basement alone. Like go be outside, like that counts, right? And so really giving people, I guess, permission, but it's not. Like just letting them know that they already had permission to do fitness how they want.
I saw this one super mom last summer downtown. I was down there with my wife, and we get out of the car, and there's 3 kids get out of the van, and there's 3 bicycles. Dad gets out of the van, there's a bicycle. Mom comes out and starts doing her running stretches, and then all of the family rolls on the bike. Mom starts just pumping, running. I was like, oh my God, she's a superhero.
So I like to call that the global equalizer. Like when we look at, I just want to live my life and I want to live it well. It's like, well, I want to be able to play with my kids. I want to be able to I want to stay in the game, man. I want to be able to move. At some point, we're all going to get there. And for me, with my setup and stuff that I have going on, it confronted me really early, which had its own stuff. But that's something that I think is like, it's kind of a scaffolding that fitness is built on that, like, we don't talk about that much because it's like, hey, listen, you're going to have to deal with this at some point. So you'll notice this typical kind of fitness journey, you're going to have people kind of going along and whatever else, and there's going to be an injury or there's going to be something that happens or a condition or whatever. And it's all of a sudden, it's like, well, man, I just want to be able to do the best I can so I can still, you know, be with my family and experience life well and blah, blah, blah. So it all ends up coming back to that experience-based thing, which has been really impactful in my career. And it's really cool to talk to you because it's impactful in your career and you're talking more on the body comp side rather than the let's fix your busted meat wagon. So it's kind of, it's cool how there's overlap there for sure. As far as a professional, we talked about the fitness or fiction thing as far as your own fitness journey. As far as the coaching that you see out there and you've experienced yourself, what are your kind of fitness or fiction answers there? What's like the biggest thing that you see pushed forward to people is like, this is the thing versus the thing that you're like, the best coaches are doing, like, this is like something to follow?
I would say that I'll go with the fitness first because last time I started with the croc.
What's the biggest crocodile that you've heard?
Yeah. So the fitness or fact in this play on words is there's no good or bad food. Like you can eat whatever, like any food. Are there ways to make it work towards your goals? Yes, but no food has a moral value assigned to it.
Well, but I saw it on Oprah.
You saw, yeah, that white bread is evil.
Well, Dr. Phil said.
Exactly.
He's credible.
Yeah, he's
got a TV show.
Yeah, and he's jacked, isn't he?
I saw a guy on TikTok say that all I needed to do was to avoid these foods that decrease my testosterone.
Did he look jacked though? He's credible.
Was he in a grocery store without a shirt?
Exactly.
Because that is like better than having a PhD after your name these days. As far as the fiction goes, I would say that from the professional side, the biggest fiction would be that discipline is kind of like the mother of all qualities that you need to achieve your fitness goals.
That's what Goggins says, and Jocko Willink.
It's true.
Jocko posts a picture of his watch at 5 a.m. every morning just to make me feel bad.
Jocko's thing is discipline equals freedom, right? And I feel like the simple way to kind of like talk through that is to be like, okay, so you're disciplining everything. And if you read his book, he's like, if I feel sad, I discipline myself to not. Basically.
I just don't feel sad.
Yeah. He's like, I will just discipline my mind. And it's like, cool, but you're not free. You're just a slave to discipline now. Because the moment that you stop being disciplined is the moment the freedom is gone, right? So it's like, I mean, it within itself contradicts itself. So it doesn't really feel like great logic.
I have a particular anecdote on that one.
Okay.
I think it's a bad thing when you tell somebody to fix their issue by just not. And you and me were with your sister, and you were like, Kaylee, stop being such a spaz. And she turned around and goes, I'm not a spaz. Like,
that's a classic.
Good luck proving that you're not
antiquity.
a spaz while you're totally spazzing out. But I think that like heightening of the issue is actually like that was hilarious. And I had a good laugh, and I still laugh about it. And it was like 15 years ago. But it kind of, the reason it's so funny is because it's such a global truth. It's like, hey, just stop doing this. It's like, well, man, when you try to just stop it, it's just highlighting the fact that it's there. I don't think that makes it any better.
Yeah.
Like, stop being a spaz. Good luck not acting like a spaz now. You're going to lose it. Like,
yeah.
Hey, just settle down. Like, try saying that to your wife and see how you come out.
Yeah.
With the whole discipline thing for me, it becomes a issue of, I became an adult recently, by the way.
Nice. Me too.
I've been adulting for a little bit, and there's so much to do.
Yeah.
And if you slam cold showers, meditate, journal, exercise, physio for destroyed joints, take care of the kid, hang out with the wife.
Taking a picture of your watch.
Taking a picture of my abs with my watch in the morning.
Yeah.
It's a rough life, man.
Yeah.
And you have to fit in there doing the 5-minute abs.
Yeah. Where's that from?
It's something about Mary.
Oh.
It's like, yeah, that's going to be really good until someone comes out with 4-minute abs. No. 5 is the number.
4 minutes better than 5.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like if you discipline think of that. If you discipline every action of your life, that means that everything is planned.
Yeah, sorry, that's where I was going with it being like, there's so much tasks to do. If I'm just supposed to be disciplined, like, and I've tried it even like within the past year where I bring out a monthly planner and I make little boxes of everything I want to do. One of those was like learning Vietnamese, meditating, all these things. And every day I start checking the boxes. Checking those boxes lasts about a week. And then you'll see 3 weeks where I don't check the boxes because there's too many boxes.
Overwhelm, and then you hate yourself for not doing it.
And then I mean, like, the funny thing is, like, so many evidence-based coaches are talking about discipline, and it's like, but the evidence basis of behavioral science does not claim that discipline is everything or discipline equals freedom, right? Like, that's just not the truth. So it's
what
kind
does
of
the evidence back? Like, what direction would the evidence push?
So, like, for instance, I have a board certified behavioral analyst on my in my client roster, and she listens to my podcast, and I did an episode about discipline and basically how it was like kind of a facade that you need so much, that it's like the linchpin of what you're doing. And she was like, yeah, this reminds me of ACT, so acceptance and commitment therapy. And she was like what you need is decided action in service of your values. All right, that's what research is showing, and that's kind of what we're talking about, isn't it?
Sounds way harder than discipline, though.
Yeah, it does sound way harder because you have to be able to tolerate discomfort.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is discipline is just, making things a little bit easier because we are so terribly horrified as humans of uncertainty.
I also think we're terrified, like, of just digging on that deeper level. It digs up demons that people don't really. Again, there's too much crap going on already. Like, if we start digging, what other skeletons are going to arise?
Yeah,
that's hard work, man. When you have to look in the mirror and kind of deal with what's there that you don't really like, of course, like, that's inherently going to be hard.
Well, inherently, what's there that you don't see is going to be what you don't really like and have therefore put behind you, right?
Absolutely.
So it's like
what comes up is going to be
uncomfortable.
tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of these things that it's like, okay, like the Fitness or Fiction podcast, what really started, me and Eric were talking about, what's wrong with the fitness industry and whatever. And this is the exact topic, hype. It's like, oh, you just here's the answer.
Yeah.
And some of the worst posts on Instagram and TikTok and whatever that I just like, I'm like, hide. It's people that are like, let's put this to bed for good. I'm like, that's not how it works, man.
I like the words they put on the supplement jars where it's just like power, science, muscle, strength. And I'm like, oh my
Evidence.
God. I should buy
Real
this.
Kenyans.
I need to buy this.
Was that Power Thirst back in the Power Thirst?
You were on the NO Explode train?
I
I don't think
so. I was on
He's
the
too young
super
for
pump
that.
train.
Mr. Coach Caleb
He's
was
too young
not
for
on
that.
the...
Yeah,
Yeah. Sorry.
he's a child.
We'll get you some. It's
Great.
But it's
And-
evidence-based and science. It's got power, science.
Outside of the hype words,
Yeah.
that's what this podcast started as. It's like, okay, well, what are people being misled by? And I actually still think, after doing this as long as we have, that it's still hype.
Yeah.
And most podcasts that you listen to, they're trying to get it down to like 10 minutes and whatever. And it's really hard to get into an issue and talk about the real story. And it's a lot easier to sell, well, just do this and then it's fixed. And people buy it, but it's not true. And it's going to take them down a road, but it's going to make you money in the meantime. But what we're trying to do is be like, hey, there's a bigger conversation to that. It's like, well, you should take creatine, for example, really well-backed supplement and whatever else. But for a person that's like, well, I'm not even consistent on exercise yet. It's like, man, don't spend your money there.
Yeah.
Let's just focus on your value of I want to exercise more. Where does that come from? Let's start that before you start spending your money on something that's probably not going to have a huge impact yet. People don't like hearing it though.
No.
They don't like hearing the bigger story, and they don't necessarily have the attention span for it.
People almost, it's like you're holding them back when they're excited. The all or nothing people, they're like,
Yep.
oh man, all or nothing. I'm going to do these 7 things. And you're like, whoa. Let's start with like maybe 2 of those things. And then it's almost like, oh man, he deterred me. He slowed me down. I was
Yeah.
ready to sprint and he made me walk. And people don't like that.
No, and I think it's interesting, like we had mentioned this when we were talking before too, like the number one question that I ask my clients is, I'm like, how willing are you to be uncomfortable right now? Like, how much discomfort can you tolerate? And it's not the type of thing of like, because this leg extension's going to be miserable.
I'm going to crush you.
It's like, no, you cannot go into a calorie deficit right now. That will not get you to your goals. And how willing are you to be sitting at this current weight? That's incredibly uncomfortable for people.
I've never done that row with somebody.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep you here for a while.
Yep. And it is, but the funny thing is, they're kind of like, I had once had a client, I always ask him what does your body need in a check-in? And I once had a client who was having a particularly bad week, and she's like, what my body needs is the opposite of what I want. Therefore, I don't care. Fast forward like 2 months, and she's just like raving about the changes that have happened. And the funny thing is, the results that kept being kind of difficult to maintain are like super sticky. She just got back from vacation this week and was like, I didn't gain any weight. And trust me, I ate. And it's like, great.
So as we kind of get into the twilight of the podcast here,
No.
that is an experience that I think all 3 of us have had often, where it's like when you go through this process and the experience with a coach that's engaged with you, you'll inevitably arrive in places that you want to go and realize that was a value. Mm-hmm. So I have a client that recently approached me and said, I really appreciate that you've never asked me to lose weight. And I was like, well, why would I ask you to lose weight? You came to me because your back was busted. And she's like, well, but my back isn't sore, and it hasn't been sore for over a year. And I'm like way stronger, and I'm consistently exercising, and I have lost like 35 pounds, but you never told me I needed to. And I was like, well, my view on training isn't that I need to get you to fit into my values. Mm-hmm. And P.S., my values aren't that you need to be skinny. That's not my business. But for you to look at me and say, hey, I've lost weight in dealing with my back pain and getting consistent on exercise and focused on how I'm feeling, I'm really happy for that. Mm-hmm. But my question would be, do you want to lose weight? Is that something that became a goal for you? She's like, well, not really, but I'm super excited about it. Thanks for that. And I'm like, well, man, I don't think that should be anything that's outside of the norm.
Yeah.
Like I shouldn't be putting my values on you, but I think in the fitness industry, a lot of it is, hey, come and do my program. You'll lose 15 pounds. That's taking your value and pushing it on them, which I don't think is a really good thing.
No. And I think that not to get political, but our culture pushes values onto people that are culturally accepted and may not necessarily be that individual's, including weight loss, right? And being smaller. So I agree. It's like coaches shouldn't be putting their values onto someone. I guess they come by it honestly, but
Yeah, it actually goes the other way now too, where it's like, yeah, well, being overweight is super healthy, and it's like, well, like I wouldn't go that far either. Like there are impasses that you can cross that it's no longer a good choice for you. I still don't think that I should step in and be like, well, you need to do. That's the big issue there. It's not.
Yes.
It's not actually a health issue. It's a like, well, I'm this weight and I'm being told this sort of stuff and treated like this. It's like, well, that's the big problem there, right? So, anyways, this has been kind of cool because we've covered a few different things. Do you have any other things you want to ask him?
I mean, I could sit here for much longer and talk, but I'm not sure where we are right now. We're
Yeah.
in the twilight.
Yeah, we are in the twilight. Yeah.
Is there anything we missed that you directly wanted to discuss?
no, I don't think so.
You want to measure your biceps versus Curtis's?
I will lose. I've got length.
The two of us,
not
though.
Girth. That was not meant for that. What do we call that? A Freudian slip?
Yeah.
What am I
Okay,
really thinking?
But I will commend you on the idea that you're totally going to dummy me in the fact that I don't have anything that looks close to a Canadian tuxedo today. You've really out-Canadianed me. So
This isn't denim guy.
yeah. Well,
The guy was such a slight.
Yeah, guy.
Don't call me guy, bud.
Yeah.
Don't call me bud, friend.
Don't call me friend, asshole. So at the end of the day, this conversation is kind of what we're looking to have with people. So thanks for coming out and sharing your unique story and perspective. That's kind of what we're doing with this series in talking to people, is trying to give our listeners an ability to see that everybody's pathway is a little bit different and kind of get into the weeds on a few things that are just real. And what's more real than, hey, here's where I've been and here's how it felt.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for being here, man.
Would you like to plug your handles?
Sure. So I do online coaching. So if you're interested in working with me, you can find me, or you just want to hear my content. It's free too. I'm on Instagram. It's Coach Caleb K.
It's not Mr. Coach?
Pardon? It's not Mr. Coach. It is not
Sir.
Mr. or any
Mr. Sir Coach
prefix
Caleb, sir.
to Coach. It's at Coach Caleb K.
With no dots or ampersands.
No.
That's correct. And then what's your
This-
podcast called?
And my podcast is called the Experience-Oriented Fitness Podcast. So if you want to type that lengthy ditty into any podcast provider, you'll find it. But I'm sure that these two will put it in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll definitely be posting on it soon because I'm going to be on that podcast putting the ass in class.
Yay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for joining us, sir.
Yeah, thank you guys.
If you're still here, we always appreciate likes, follows, and things of that nature. If you have any suggestions of topics you'd like us to cover, pretty soon we're doing the infrared episode.
Yeah, the Hydrogun infrared sauna blanket review.
Man, Hydrogun sent us
You can
an
do your
infrared
meditation
sauna
in there.
blanket.
I've heard that if you use that, all of your problems will be solved.
Only if you meditate and cold plunge after.
Of course, obviously. And that you wake up at 4 a.m.
while
to do
taking
it.
BCAs.
Can we
Yes.
all just do a couple rounds of Wim Hof together?
Absolutely.
And that's the end. Thanks for joining us this week. We appreciate your support.
If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you would subscribe, follow, and throw us a like on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts.